Timeless 106.1 FM, KFFB. This is Bob Connell. Thanks so much for joining us for another edition of our Open Mic program. As promised, we do have Chris Caldwell with us right now. He's with the Delta Regional Authority, and you're the co-chairman, Chris. And, I knew you back in the Senate days. You've been around a long time.
I've been around here, been in your station many times back when I worked for Senator Bozeman, and spent a lot of time here in Fairfield Bay.
Well, I thought that was a great opportunity for Arkansas when you were appointed to this. This is a big deal.
No, yeah, absolutely. I was so honored to have the position. Was nominated by President Trump in late 2017 and confirmed by the Senate. Obviously, the full support. Senator Bozeman wouldn't be here without him. So, as a matter of fact, I believe within the first few weeks of me being confirmed and sworn in January of 2018, Fairfield Bay was like one of the first towns I came to when we were announcing the water line expansion for the convention center, the hotel.
That's right. And, look at it now in Fairfield Bay. The hotel is here. You've got the 90 miles of track. You got you're working, I know, the internet. Everybody asks you, that's your number one question. But tell us, to those that just tuned in, that doesn't really understand, what does the Delta Regional Authority do? What is the job of you?
We're a federal agency, a partnership with 8 states that make up the greater Mississippi Delta region. It's 252 counties and parishes across Illinois, Missouri, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, Mississippi, Louisiana, in the Black Belt of Alabama. We're an economic development agency. We invest in basic public infrastructure, as we have in multiple projects here in Van Buren County, Stone County, White County, Jackson County. Transportation infrastructure, as we're working on today, along with workforce development and small business development. The board that I chair is comprised of the 8 governors of those 8 states that I mentioned. I run the day-to-day of the agency and our staff that assist in making grants to accomplish these goals.
Man, it's amazing. Well, we got to talk about something. I think it was a big news for Greers Ferry Lake. Everyone I know pretty much has been to Greers Ferry Lake for some kind of event, from Memorial Day to Labor Day, and even during the winter now. We've got a lot of people come and enjoy the lake. But we had some big news when we talked about the helicopter stationed here with a bunkhouse, staffed 24/7, 365 days.
Huge asset to the whole region. First off, we were talking about that infrastructure earlier. From the water line and sewer line work the DRA has done here, grants they've made across, the whole region. We've done these to continuing to enhance the infrastructure through the guise of economic growth and economic development. And having that resource here to where, if you have a traumatic experience at, one of the 90 miles of trails, hunting, fishing, sporting, that even in the winter, as you mentioned, my family, we came up on the lake this winter to watch for bald eagles. If you get in some inclement weather, one of the great things about God's canvas that we're out in is the mountains and the hilliness of it. And in inclement weather, that can make, getting to health facilities very difficult. So the MedFlight it's part of that asset in that infrastructure that not only creating jobs and providing those resources, but take you to Clinton, to the hospital in 2 minutes, or to Stone County Hospital in 3 or 4 minutes, or worst case scenario, you mean Little Rock in 20 minutes. They'll save lives. But again, also as people are looking to locate here, for just to move here or locate a business here, that's another selling point of access to medical care. Access to hospital and healthcare for employees is in the top 2 or 3 things that employers are looking at when they're looking at locating a business. Mm-hmm. So this helps enhance that, as well as address some immediate needs, but is also kind of a cherry on top and looking for attracting new businesses.
It's amazing. Look at the survival flight, as you said, and Chris Mellard is just a great owner that lives on the lake. Yeah. And that's something that he said.
Well, he moved from out of state to locate his business here, right? Yeah. He chose to come here to this region, locate his business, and then start, look, he's building his assets here. It's going to be, 24 hours. It just takes 10 people to operate that. This is just, this will compound upon itself. And that's true economic growth and economic development.
It's a great partnership for sure. Okay, well, let's talk about the previous 4 infrastructure projects in the area. Let's talk about those.
Okay, well, we had the sewer line out along the highway, which, some businesses, some small businesses, and even some, larger businesses that were on septic that obviously their fields have been saturated. So we were able to run sewer, which then has now invited, more development. You had, before my time, the city took over the dilapidated building here and it's turned into a multi-purpose convention center. Had a lot of remediation to do work there. And then the first one that I worked on in this role was the water line expansion, which now we have a hotel that's employing people and bringing in tax revenue and bringing in, people to come spend their dollar here in this region, and creating jobs. So, all centered around infrastructure, because for us, it's not just the one thing that we're helping invest in, but we're helping invest in things that are going to compound and create more growth and the ripple out, quantify that. And this is a great return on the dollar.
Now, another thing is, what is the regional development plan for? What does that mean?
Well, by congressional statute, every 5 years we have to do a regional development plan. So we are operating under the guise of what we learned 5 years ago, Regional Development Plan 3. We're actually in the process right now of doing our new development plan, which is a little different in standard because, which is going to be a good thing, I think. It's making us operate a little bit out of the box. We generally do focus groups and meetings with people across our whole region. Like, what do you think the needs are? And we kind of bring all this data back and you look at where we're heading. It's kind of our compass to make sure that we're on track as a regional agency versus a big national agency across. We're with a very specific region with some specific demographic and geographic needs. And so to stay focused on that, every 5 years we do a plan. So we're in the midst of this during the pandemic and COVID-19, we're not doing a lot of big focus groups
Right.
and traveling. So if people go to dra.gov, it'll be right there, splashed on the homepage. They can take a survey, right? It's a great place to go and learn about the Delta Regional Authority as well. But those that are familiar or those that are more curious about what our agency can do in your community or your town, it's a great resource. We have a survey there, what you think the needs are under the guise of what we do in economic development and infrastructure building in partnering with cities and communities and nonprofits. And so that process is doing the plans a little more digital, which, you mentioned internet earlier, and is a big need and a big, personally for me, is a huge priority at the Delta Regional Authority to help expand rural broadband.
Then that's when you look at, a lot of people don't realize, those that listen, I mean, we cover 13 counties. The cities have fairly good internet, most cities. Some cities don't have real good internet, but if you go outside those cities,
you're stuck to, a handheld device and, depending on what the signal is that day. So rural broadband, and there's a lot of different federal programs out there, and we have been working hard at DRA to, within our footprint, any way that we can help leverage or capitalize some of those other bigger federal programs or agencies, or with local co-ops or any eligible entity to help expand their footprint across ours in providing high-speed internet. We look at it really, or I look at it, and we were talking about it earlier, but Senator Bozeman always said rural broadband today is the equivalent of rural electrification in the 20s. And so if you read your history, rural electrification, took off in the 20s and really revolutionized rural America. And so that's where we are. And I think you're seeing that now, but more important ever in coming out of this pandemic is for us to continue to build that asset out. So we've been working hard. Different states have different regulations, and so we work within those on how we can help provide in communities, municipalities, expand that footprint. You have a lot of co-ops that have gotten into that business. And so it's a huge priority of us at DRA to help expand that.
Now, another thing, we've all learned something from COVID-19. Really, I mean, I think we're going to see America not so dependent on China. That's a whole political thing, but it's true. We didn't realize it. And that's something people always say, well, we didn't realize it. Just like in lawnmower part, I'm waiting on a throttle.
Right.
They're telling me July, and it's just for my little push lawnmower that I can't use. I got to use my riding lawnmower because I can't get a throttle cable. It comes from China. Everything's backed up. Yeah. Well, those are things that we're going to do. What's some of the things that you find when you look at COVID-19? What is some things that we've found some deficiencies in?
Well, our economy as a whole in this nation's about 70% consumption. Okay.
That's true.
So when something like this happens, everybody realizes it. And so, we've seen hiccups across all different sectors. I think twofold. I think this is going to change how we work, because you've got a lot of people that are working from home. You've seen some of the bigger companies in some of the huge urban areas say, like, hey, we're going to do this indefinitely now. Like, you can work from home, right? That brings us to our broadband need. Okay. But then I think secondly, my hope is, and what, in coming out of this and what we're looking at is a few things right now. Is we're monitoring, obviously, our healthcare assets, right? Because I mentioned earlier, healthcare is so vital to economic development, okay? And how our rural healthcare network that is strained on a good day, the resiliency is there that we can kind of help and assist. And we have several programs at Delta Regional Authority where we work with rural hospitals, technical assistance to help replace doctors and things So we're watching that very closely to see how, where these stress points, maybe new stress points we didn't know were, that need to be shored up. But then secondly, in what, you hear the president talking about, like, bringing these manufacturing jobs back to America. And, there used to be, and you're old enough to remember that there used to be a plant or a mill in every town in America that made a widget of some kind. Now, it will look different than it probably did in the 50s and the 40s, right? Naturally. But, what we are looking is for those opportunities in our footprint where we already have assets or in place for economic development, where there's those deals coming in. There's obviously a lot of infrastructure that's going to take to get that back on. So there's another area as we kind of get on the backside of this, and we start to see things to change, because there's one thing that we do know absolutely, there's going to be some significant changes in how we operate and do day-to-day life of this.
That's true. That's true.
So what we want to be is resilient as an agency to help and aid in that economic recovery, because I believe wholeheartedly it will come back, very, very strong, and want it to be a V and not a L, as you see on the news a whole lot. And everything that we can do as an agency to aid in that, especially in our more rural towns that have seen lots of population loss because of job loss. And so if there's an opportunity to bring some of these jobs back that we've lost and create that back, we're going to be at the tip of that spear trying to help spur that on.
It's a win for everyone. And that's when you look at economic development, you look at also like factories and things of that nature. And one thing it kind of really, I thought during this whole thing, I thought was a big victory for America. And you don't hear about the positive side, you hear the negative.
Right.
We need ventilators. We are all going to die. That's basically what they were saying. We need 1 million ventilators.
Yeah.
Well, now we're saying we have so many ventilators produced because American manufacturers stepped up. Now they're exporting them out of the other country.
And an important part of that is, this is the true American spirit there, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what the game changer in World War II. Throughout our history, our ability to rise faster than anybody, right? And everybody wants to talk about government regulation, this and that, and to watch the debt get cleared here. As the president, all the agencies kind of came together like, okay, we're going to do this. The federal cooperation that you've seen. I serve also on the White House Council on Opportunity Zones. And that whole council is, all the cabinet secretaries, me and 2 other regional commission chairmen to, iron out any red tape that we have in investing in opportunity zones. And you've seen that on a much bigger scale now, right? How fast that happened, that GM or these other, boom, we got ventilators. The entrepreneurial spirit, though, that's come in, even here locally in Arkansas, at the port in Helena, Arkansas, which is not far from our home office at DRA in Clarksville, Mississippi. We've done a lot of work at that port and expanding some infrastructure there. There's a plant there that makes chemicals for wastewater treatment plants. They have converted to operating 24/7, creating hand sanitizer now. I was just talking to a guy. He and his wife have a small business they've started in Bryant, Arkansas, and they're making candles. They have retooled in a matter of about a week and are making hand sanitizer, and they can't make enough. And I say that because when we look at business development, we look at a lot of emphasis on entrepreneurism, because in smaller rural America, there's a lot of people who are entrepreneurs. They don't know it, but they are entrepreneurs. And so you've got a lot of opportunity there we've seen come out of this, right, where people are making things that they weren't. There's not many places in the world that can do that. And so sector to kind of to watch is, what opportunity is this brought about, that maybe didn't exist before. Somebody didn't know they had the capacity or the ability to do that, we can shore up and make a long-term, hopefully, viable industry for a community.
It is awesome. Well, Chris, we ran out of time, but I tell you, It's all about America, is it not?
Absolutely.
And I'm telling you, when we see that, that's why I'm not worried about it. I think we're going to raise above it.
Hey, we live in the freest, greatest country in the world, and it'll continue to be that, I believe, wholeheartedly.
Well, we appreciate you taking time and talking with us. We've been talking with Chris Caldwell. He is the co-chair of the Delta Regional Authority, and that is amazing opportunity that you have stepped in. And I really appreciate you coming by and talking with us here.
Thanks, Bob. Always good to see you.